Good evening, everybody. My name is Jody Pushkin. I am the manager of the newspaper and education program and the one who sends you annoying emails all the time. And I am going to turn over our little introduction here to Sue Bedry, our development officer. She has been with NIE for, oh, it just seems like decades and decades, but I know it's not that long.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for making time to join our webinar tonight. As Jody said, I am the development officer for the newspaper and education program at the Tampa Bay Times. I have been in this role since 2011. And I'm a big space nerd, which is how this project came to be. And also joining us, and you will hear from him later, is Larry Plank. He is president of the Tampa Bay STEM Network. He is also a visiting assistant professor of science education in the College of Education at the University of South Florida. Just a little housekeeping note as we get started. We have allowed time for Q&A. Most of us are not going to mind if you just want to put your hand up or jump in and ask questions. That's fine, but you can also put questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring that and we'll make sure that we get to everyone's questions. Also, I did go ahead and mute all the participants, but just to avoid background noise. But you are welcome to unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question. So I'm going to lead off. I'm going to give everyone just a general background of our project, and then we will move on to our more specific presentations. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I am going to I'm going to go ahead and share and we're going to talk about Space for All. So Space for All is the project that we kicked off actually last year, 2004, and it will run through this summer. So it was a one-year project. And what was the impetus for this project? Well, as I mentioned, I'm a big space nerd. We have this quote up here from Dr. Lewis, who is in charge, or was in charge, I believe, of spacesuits. She is the spacesuit curator at the National Air and Space Museum. And I challenge you to find many cooler jobs than that, except for maybe wearing the spacesuits in space. But she mentions in 60 years, we've gone from a satellite that beeped once per second to instantaneous communications around the globe, the ability to navigate almost anywhere on Earth, and accurate weather forecasts that tell us when dangerous storms are going to be coming and give us weeks of warning so that we can prepare. And if that's not pretty amazing, I don't know what it is. Space for All is a partnership between the Tampa Bay Times newspaper and education program, Florida Press Educational Services, the Tampa Bay STEM Network, and the Pinellas Public Library Cooperative. And it is funded by a grant from NASA. So why NIE? Why did we do this project? So newspapers are really a critical tool for exploring science beyond the classroom. Scientific literacy, critical thinking skills, these are all things that newspapers can help you with in your classroom. We call them a living textbook because it is literally renewed every day. The information will never be outdated if you get the daily newspaper. The other thing that the newspaper can help you with is that it really demonstrates practical applications of skills. So if you're reading the business section and you're reading about a new business that has just opened up, it's a startup and they're doing something with, for example, biotechnology, that's so easy to show students. This is an actual application of this biology lesson that you are learning today. You're learning about cells. Well, look where this can lead you. So they really, they help students visualize what what the ultimate application of the academic lessons will be. And they also help them relate it to their daily lives. For example, what's going on right now in your state, in your community, in your neighborhood scientifically. There is bound to be something, whether it is weather related, perhaps a flood. Why is the flood happening, right? Is it an extinction event? Do you live near the water and you're dealing with red tide? All of these things are perfect current event news items that can be tied directly to the science classroom. So the overall goals, the overarching goals of Space for All were to engage youth in grades 5 through 8 with NASA. We wanted to enhance their scientific literacy skills. We wanted to encourage them to explore STEM careers, and we wanted to connect them with NASA resources. Many of you will know that NASA has just a wealth of educational material that's out there free to use for anyone. But many of the kids don't know about it. So one of our goals was to connect them more directly with that. The learning objectives that we set for ourselves with this project, when kids use the resources, these project resources in the classroom, we want them to learn how to evaluate the sources of scientific information, right? So this ties back to media literacy, learning how to evaluate a source. Is it a reliable source of scientific information, or is it clickbait? Right? We want them to be able to evaluate arguments based on evidence. Learning how to pick apart an argument and look at the underlying points of evidence is absolutely crucial. We wanted them to be able to identify the scientific issues underlying national and local issues. And in Florida, this is very, very topical. There are many scientific issues that we are dealing with in our environment every day. And we wanted them to be able to express positions that are scientifically and technologically informed. So the Space for All project has 4 components. The first component, and you'll learn more about this later, is a curriculum supplement. This is a publication that is aligned to the Florida standards for grades 5 through 8. We also did a companion teacher guide. The teacher guide, and again, we'll talk more about this later, but the teacher guide focuses on how exactly you can use newspaper resources to bolster your science teaching. And it gives you more than 100 pages of activities and resources. The third component is what you are enjoying right now, our teacher webinar. And the fourth component is a series of hands-on STEM events for the students in grades 5 through 8. So that fourth component, the Space for All events, these are a series of live in-person events that are taking place in partnership with the Pinellas Public Library Cooperative. We've already held one, and there are 3 more that are scheduled and at least 1 more that is yet to be confirmed. So these events are free and they're open to the public. Some of them are smaller than others, so we are trying to keep those smaller ones available for the neighborhood kids. But the Lealman Exchange event and the East Community Library events will be large events. And if you have kids that are interested in space, interested in STEM, I encourage you to check out those events and possibly pass that along to your students or your students' parents. All of the events, they're targeted to students in grades 5 through 8. They're free. Registration is required. And we'll give you links in email, but you can go to mytbtickets.com and just search for Space for All, and you'll find links to those event pages. And that is the end of what I wanted to introduce all of you to. I am going to turn you over to Larry Plank, who is going to tell you a little bit about the Tampa Bay STEM Network, about STEM ecosystems, about why this is so important to bring it into the classroom. So take it away, Larry.
Okay, perfect. All right, welcome everybody. I see a couple of familiar names as guests here this evening. So, greetings. I haven't spoken with a few of you in quite some time, but I'm sure hopefully it's good for you to hear my voice as well. So, reviewing where I've come from, many of you may know that I was the executive director for science and STEM education for Hillsborough County Public Schools. I worked in the school district for 23 years, and I am now on a visiting assistant professor line at the University of South Florida, full-time for at least one more year, if not two, in the College of Education. In addition, we started a nonprofit in the Tampa Bay region called the Tampa Bay STEM Network. The Tampa Bay STEM Network will be celebrating its 10th birthday in 2026. And our friends here at the Tampa Bay Times, the newspaper and education, asked us to be a part of this grant opportunity with them. Um, So my machine is actually frozen. So I'm going to stop share and open it back up in just a moment. Jody and Sue, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
perfect. I was going to say it was just working like 15 minutes ago. I hope it continues to work. All right, let's try jumping on a new slide and going from there. If not, we'll have to do it like a not so good way. There we go. Yay. Okay. So I'm not sure if this was intended to be interactive or not, but I was hoping that folks could put a mark or check mark or smiley face using the annotate tools for which district or which area that they represent on this particular call. And if not, you can mark up for the who is here portion. If you can't do it at all because you're on an iPhone that doesn't have that feature, then we can just take a moment to uh,
You can put it in the chat as well.
yeah, that would be great. So used to interactive presentations, right? All right, well, we'll skip that part. Now I know that no one has the ability to tag in. So I've listed here a lot of the organizations that have influenced the work that's happened, not only at the University of South Florida and not only throughout my career, but also in the Tampa Bay region. So I did have the pleasure, of course, of working for Hillsborough County Public Schools for a long time. As Sue had mentioned, I am the president of the Tampa Bay STEM Network, and as I shared, that was a nonprofit that was started in the Tampa Bay area from a collection of organizations, and several were other nonprofits that you might recognize here, like the Florida Aquarium in Mosey. The Tampa Bay STEM Network grew into being the regional partner serving 9 school districts in the southwest corner of Florida, and still is the Code.org computer science professional learning uh, collaborator with Code for this particular area of Florida. Incella is another great organization that I'd like to talk about briefly. They just had their annual conference in connection with the National Science Teachers Association. And if you haven't heard of Incella or you're not a part of Incella and you are interested in leading from the classroom or eventually becoming a science education leader in some other way, Incella is the organization for you. Incella is the leadership arm of the National Science Teachers Association or Teaching Association, and they do hold 2 face-to-face convenings per year. So we in Region C have had a great presence in the leadership of the organization, I was a former president of Incella back in 2020 during the pandemic, of course. But we do have a Region C director that is from Hillsborough County Public Schools, and that is Khadijah Jones from the school district at the district level. So Jeremy Blinn from the other side of the state of Florida is the incoming president. So again, lots of representation from Florida in this national organization. And a lot of the authors that you may love, like Paige Keeley or Roger Bybee of the 5E instructional model, are all members of Incella and typically attend the events. So the great part about Incella is that it's much smaller than NSTA and always happens next to NSTA. So on that first day, if you want to be in a smaller group of 100 to 200 people, but be brushing shoulders with those types of folks who published a lot of the science resources that all of us use, Incella is the group for you. So jumping into the talk, there are three really, really big transitional moments that have happened in science education and of course continue to happen today under the current administration. So the first was in the 1950s, which, you know, Sue has said that she's a great science nerd and bigger space nerd. So we decided to construct the publication, you know, as a storyline and what has happened within space. What is, you know, so this has kind of the same starting spot for science education. It was after this time in the 1950s that public education systems around states decided to include science in graduation requirements and also start training science teachers to be in front of students. And much of that didn't exist before the 1950s. You were lucky if you had a good science teacher. You were lucky if your school required science for graduation. So it was a much different educational landscape in the 1940s into the 1950s and then the 1960s. In the 1980s, another transformation took place that impacted science education, and that was the publication of A Nation at Risk. So one of the results of this publication is that magnet schools were born. And these magnet schools, in many cases, had a science, or what we might call today, a STEM-centric curriculum. So lots of science and lots of STEM for a few kids for where we were in the 1980s. Now today, there is a federal STEM education plan. The one that's shown here on this slide is the most recent that was published in 2024. So prior to the current administration. The one prior to that was published in 2018, which was during President Trump's first tenure in office. And the one prior to that, and one of the most famous ones, was born out of the PCAST report, which was under the Obama administration. So if you go to the federal government's website and look for the STEM education plan that's current, you're going to get a picture of the White House and a 404 not found web notification. But I do have the actual PDF of this document that is still guiding the policies of all of the science-centric organizations in the federal government, like NASA, NOAA, NSF, and all that they have to do currently in the public education realm as organizations, in addition to the work that they currently do. Also mentioned in this publication as the number one resource that a community can develop is a STEM learning ecosystem. And I'll talk about ecosystems in just a bit, but we do have the great fortune of having the Tampa Bay STEM Network here and a connection directly to the STEM learning ecosystem community of practice, which exists internationally. So I start here in 2021 was one of the last few years that I was seeking out grants within the school district. And this was a quote from the Department of Defense and sharing about, you know, we just don't have enough students with the interest or the skill sets, right, to fulfill DoD responsibilities and positions, in addition to everything that happens in the private sector for companies, organizations that also feed and fill our national security responsibilities. So we did, I'm going to go ahead and admit, Mary, okay. We did apply for a Department of Defense grant at that time. It was the very first time the DoD had offered a Department of Defense grant specifically focused upon K-12 education. And Hillsborough County Public Schools was the only recipient out of the 12 recipients that was a school district. Of course, they were working closely with the Tampa-based STEM Network and our partner organizations, but we took great pride in the $3 million that we were able to utilize to create learning spaces, not only in classrooms, but also outside of classrooms for our community's children. So this bigger grant, the Department of Defense grant, did contain a space element, which then was folded into our current grant with NASA and NIE. And part of the elements of what we did with the DoD grant over several years, and even prior to the Department of Defense grant, when we had external funding from organizations like Moffitt and Bristol Myers Squibb, where we did STEM Family Days and STEM Family Nights, we took the turnkey elements that were extraordinarily successful in those days and are now utilizing them in the public library system. So much of the work that not only we had done in the Tampa Bay area, but also the other grant awardees can be found on the Department of Defense education website. So it's still there. I did poke around today. The resources are still there too. So a lot of the stuff that we had created, even if it was around equity, inclusion, expansion of opportunities for students, are still there. So check that out. One thing that we incorporated into that grant, and something that the Tampa Bay STEM Network attempts to do is in our core principles, is not only help teachers and schools get better at teaching science and STEM, but also ensuring that there are great augmentative programs outside the school that make connections to what students are learning in school. And I think one of the great accomplishments of the STEM network in its early days, so in 2016 and 2017, maybe even a couple of years beyond that, but definitely before the pandemic, was getting organizations like MOSI, the Florida Aquarium, the Glacier Children's Museum to work more closely with school districts to better understand what the school districts were required to and also were augmenting, science education at a variety of grade level bands so that they could then create learning experiences in the form of fun stuff like camps or other experiences after hours that were more closely aligned with what students were learning in schools. So that is a great benefit. So it reduced the duplicity of ideas, the parallel play that might go on in sandboxes, and allowed the organizations that made up the STEM network in those days a lot of freedom to explore, collaborate, and make meaning of what they were doing and position themselves in a better way in the public. If you're the Florida Aquarium and you are running a summer camp, of course, it has to be fun for the children you're serving. But for the parents, if they know that students are going to learn something that may help them and their academic careers and trajectory, then that's probably a better sell than just having a fun time at camp. So all of the organizations benefited, and we looked at this equation as really what we were trying to do. So create opportunities for students to engage in STEM careers. Let's skip over this. In Hillsborough, and then more broadly, working with Advanced Ed and West Ed, we had the opportunity to create what we thought were the pillars of STEM education. And you may see some of this, that we created or that I authored way back in the day in like 2008 or 2010 in some of the documents that still exist today. In fact, there's a playbook for STEM education that uses much of the content that we had created here in partnership with those organizations like Advanced Ed for their STEM certification of schools. And that is, what are we really looking for in STEM education? What do districts and schools need to do? And this also then cuts out and frames what the relationship should be with public school systems and the organizations that exist within their backyards. So essentially, this is creating a STEM ecosystem from the perspective of the school district before STEM ecosystems even existed. So those four areas, really the red square there is about everything great that happens in the regular school day, making sure the green square, it's college and career, so what we would call here in Florida as our CTE programs that are a lot of STEM and a lot of career readiness, value-added opportunities. The teal square is all of the things that you can do as a school district or a school, whether it's after-school clubs or maybe a STEM fair, et cetera, that the district runs to augment what happens in the school day. And then the STEM ecosystem piece comes from the cross-sector partnerships to support STEM outcomes. So that's what we call the ABCs of STEM, and we still do that in the STEM ecosystem. So going back to the Tampa-based STEM network supporting professional learning for teachers, but also providing student-centric opportunities. And currently, a lot of those opportunities have to do with space science. So I'm going to skip over this E part of teaching the E of STEM, and I'm just going to jump to the resources. If any of you were in school districts that have engineering design challenges, there's a lot of work that probably went into creating those design challenges, at least in the beginning. I know in Hillsborough, we had to go to, that the slide a couple ago, like, how do we teach engineering to all kids? What is it that teachers need to know? And we found out in some surveys that teachers really don't know a lot about engineering. They don't know what engineers do. And, at first, and now we've talked about the engineering design cycle and challenges, pretty broadly across the nation and even in Florida, even though we're not a next generation science standards adoption state. But 10 years ago, there was a huge hurdle, in teachers, especially at the elementary level, who may struggle with science content or even finding reliable science resources, didn't have a lot to rely upon or to find when, schools and districts around the country and even here in Florida, started incorporating engineering design challenges or engineering as a way of working within the world and applying science for the students. So what has evolved and is connected to NASA are all of these resources. So Teach Engineering is developed by the national academies and includes a wealth of K through 12 engineering lessons that are already prepackaged and pre-made. They're connected to state standards in many states, and including NGSS, obviously, nationally. Great resource, great website. Engineering as elementary is really where we kind of began the journey in the Tampa Bay area. It's also a publication company out of the Museum of Science in Boston. They still do quite a bit of work and have really great stuff, but it also costs money. Inspire is out of Purdue University, and they still have a wealth of K-12 resources. And you'll find some of those resources actually on the Teach Engineering website as well. And lastly, NASA developed a brand new education product called Next Gen Science. And it's about the next generation of explorers. So most of NASA's new resources are connected to this next gen platform, and they're retiring some of the older stuff. So if you're someone who relies upon NASA for STEM lessons or space lessons, you might see some of them go away or perhaps be slid into this new space under Next Gen Science at NASA. And again, a wealth of great resources for teachers. So, we have been thinking about rethinking curriculum for a long time. And these are some examples from Hillsborough when I was still there of things that we were able to do at a grassroots level, whether it was a school-based level. Many of these things were piloted in single schools or maybe a handful of schools in the district to determine whether or not, they would be appropriate for district expansion. And in many cases, like with the Department of Defense, we used these lessons and other items that we had developed with, kind of piloted within the school district as proof of concept for receiving, like a $3 million grant. They weren't just going to hand money over to people that they didn't think could create stuff. The good news is much of that stuff that we have created in this public domain is available at the DoD and in some cases other websites that house federal government lessons for teachers. Hopefully those websites are still up. I didn't go check all of them today, just a handful to make sure that we still had access to them. So it is the 13th birthday as well of the Framework for Science Education. If you're not familiar with the framework, you might say, hey, I don't really want to read a publication that's 400 pages long. It also published 12 or 13 years ago, but this is still a great resource, and it is truly a roadmap for everything that's going on in the country and will continue to do. We will continue to do regardless of who's in office in Washington. These are best practices and research-based practices in science education and was the basis for the next generation science standards. There are like quick guides that are published by the National Science Teaching Association. If you'd like a shorter read, maybe around 40 or 50 pages, that really gets into why these were formed or why the standards are the way they are, what we looked at, what kids should be doing, and the research that supports those practices within the classroom. So something to take a look at. And a happy birthday framework. So it's really set the tone for everything that we're doing in science and STEM education, not only here in the United States, I should mention, even though it is a guidepost for NGSS, other nations are utilizing the framework for science education as well. 100K in 10 is another organization that we worked very closely with in Hillsborough that the University of South Florida is working with now, and that several universities, districts, and organizations had worked with for several years. 100K in 10 was an initiative born out of President Obama's STEM PCAST report. And the idea back then was that we would train, recruit, and support 100,000 wonderful STEM teachers in 10 years. That accomplishment, that box was checked. And during that time, they started transitioning to think, how can they support districts? How can they support others in developing STEM education plans and platforms? So I had the honor of serving on a team that developed a strategic plan for districts across the country to utilize to expand engineering in their K-8 school sites. The organization is now called Beyond 100K, and they work very closely with the big orgs that we know, like NSTA and the Math Group, but also with the Smithsonian. So they just recently held a big convening in Washington, D.C., where folks that were approved to come with great ideas about thinking about the future, expanding the STEM workforce, and ensuring that we have a diverse group of science and STEM educators. 100K and 10, beyond 100K, and the Smithsonian were working on that. So I did watch a little bit that came out of that convening. And this is another note. I know that everyone is busy. Everybody's a classroom teacher, maybe a district level administrator of some kind. Whenever you have the opportunity, tune into some of these conversations that are happening. There are many, many resources that are produced by the national academies where you can say, oh my gosh, there was a workshop or a public hearing on grades 3 through 5 science education that were related to climate or related to gardening. And all of those hearings are published on the website that you can just listen to. So a lot of great stuff, and it keeps you in touch with some of the things that are happening on the national scene. So since we're not interactive, I'm going to skip that. But I did want to mention, of course, my current place of employment, the University of South Florida. I started out at USF as an adjunct faculty member close to 5 years ago. And over the past 2 years, I've been full-time as an assistant professor. But the University of South Florida has amazing resources in multiple colleges, the College of Engineering, the College of Arts and Sciences, and the College of Education to support K through 12 science teachers with their work. So this is an example of one of the projects that I was invited to be a part of, and I was a co-PI of a grant from the National Science Foundation, where we tried to take resources from those three colleges and create not only professional learning experiences for teachers, but also lessons and guideposts for the districts within the Tampa Bay region to follow as they were implementing maybe stuff from the framework for science education, or perhaps the new science and engineering practices, which are a part of the framework in NGSS that the state did adopt in many courses and are part of CPOEMs now. But all of that stuff was relatively new, 5 to 8 years ago. And the University of South Florida played a very, very integral role in the state in assisting in developing some of the resources that go into CPOEMs. So some of the work that we had looked at the university was around engineering design, and the same could probably be true for the space science stuff that we've created with the current grant. And in 2018, there wasn't a lot of comfort level, with what was happening in the general teaching population. So you see on the bottom of this slide, the College of Education had did some serious work where courses were reimagined and university students were exposed to engineering as a way or a method or a vehicle of teaching integrated STEM and understanding engineering perhaps as an assessment tool in a science classroom, or maybe even perhaps a mathematics classroom. And we saw at that time that the graduates of the university were surpassing, that of the regular school teachers in the districts that we were working with. So over some intentional work at the university, just before I left Hillsborough and was making the transition over, we had increased even these numbers on the slide around how many teachers who have attended, PD through the Stavros Center, maybe directly through the College of Education and other formats, or through the College of Engineering and the College of Arts and Sciences for the special things that they do with teachers. This collective data has indicated to us that the work that the university is doing to increase STEM teacher knowledge, not only in content, but also their practices and then perhaps resultant student achievement in their classrooms. Definitely student happiness, right? So we all know that good STEM teaching results in lots of smiles in classrooms. So I'm going to skip ahead in that interactive piece and just go right into STEM ecosystems, which is the out of school time portion of the STEM equation formula that I showed at the beginning. And STEM learning ecosystems started in 2013, basically. And they started in Anaheim, California. A gentleman by the name of Henry Samueli, who is also the CEO and owner, and also the guy who founded Broadcom. So we all have these great devices because of Henry. So a very big company, 14,000 employees around the world. And what Henry had done was endowed scholarships, et cetera, into the University of California education system, the post-secondary system. And what he was noticing is the scholarships that he was offering through Broadcom, or even the funding that he had endowed within the university system, wasn't resulting in local students seeking out those scholarships in STEM or in engineering or in space science for that matter. And he brought together business owners and some heavy hitters. The National Academies Engineering came out, and over a 3 or 4 day summit, they created this document, right? So what is a STEM learning ecosystem? What are the responsibilities of each partner? But they also published a book, the National Academies did, from that convening called STEM Learning is Everywhere. So it's a great connective kind of book for what schools can be doing with partners within their neighborhoods if a formal ecosystem doesn't exist. And of course, at this time, they didn't across the country. But it really served as a platform then for a kind of, prototyping around the country. And what Henry and the group in Anaheim did was they picked 4 different cities around the country, Providence, Chicago, New York, and not Topeka, Kansas, but not Kansas City. I'll think of the city in just a moment. Tulsa. That's what it is. Oklahoma. Sorry. They worked in those 4 cities to try to recreate some of the work that Henry had been doing and his business friends had been doing in Anaheim for quite some time and formalizing a STEM ecosystem there. And what they found was that students had more access, community assets were working together collaboratively, and it had raised the presence of STEM within the community so that it was recognizable by those that we put into office, but also by parents and other educational entities so that everyone had the opportunity to know what STEM is, know how to access it, know how to be successful in it, and then also continue to support it within communities. So after that pilot work, that they had in Oklahoma and Providence and Chicago and New York, and of course the existing ecosystem in Anaheim, they brought on 21 additional STEM learning ecosystems that we had to apply to be a part of. So the community here in Tampa Bay, we had letters from the mayor's office, we had all of our cultural institutions, our community organizations like YMCA, et cetera, all sign on to a document to say, if we are given an opportunity to create a STEM learning ecosystem in Tampa Bay and become a working community of practice with these other cities, we would be willing to do it. And thankfully, Mr. Jeff Vinnick in the Tampa Bay Lightning is actually our first funder of the Tampa Bay STEM Network. And it just so happens that Henry Samueli out in California owns the Anaheim Ducks. So he put in a call to Mr. Vinnick, and Mr. Vinnick said, yes, I'll help rally some additional troops. I'll put some money into the pot as long as STEM ecosystems matches it, and we'll get the Tampa Bay STEM network off of the ground, which is what we've done. So that picture down there at the bottom of this slide is the announcement between the school district, the STEM network, and the Tampa Bay Lightning in support of the Tampa Bay STEM network. And you'll notice that our logo is actually the same color as the Lightning and USF, and that's purposeful from those days. Uh, that was also the day, it just so happens that Mr. Vinnick announced that 600,000 hockey sticks were going to be donated to public schools, in addition to his support for STEM education through the Tampa Bay STEM Network. And all of the reporters, including those I think probably from the Tampa Bay Times, only asked about the hockey sticks and also whether or not the Lightning were going to re-sign Steven Stamkos. So no one asked any questions about STEM that day. But the ecosystem here locally grew on to do great work, as some of these pictures show. And these are photographs from different STEM events that we've had in the community through some of our partners, school districts. The STEM ecosystem here has worked very closely with the post-secondary institutions. So that last slide was actually from the University of Tampa as well. We are working currently in 3 school districts in the region, purposefully, I should say. And we look forward to continuing to do the work that we've done here in the community for the past 9 years. So that is it about the Tampa Bay STEM Network. We do have a lot of things that we're thinking about. So if you have a question or would like to be more involved with some of the things that happen here in the community, please let me know via my USF email address, and we will get you hooked up with some of the activities that happen, including the code tower work, teacher workshops for computer science. So all in all, including the current grant with NASA and Newspapers in Education and Tampa Bay Times and the library system, we're really trying to create what's in that final box, and that is opportunities for students to engage in meaningful employment and careers and to have fun with science in space and STEM. So thank you very much, and I will turn it over to my friends.
Oops, I lost my clicker there for a minute. Does anybody have any questions for Larry? You can unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat.
Hi, I'm Michelle Boylan, and I am going to be the principal of a new school in Pasco County, Skybrook KE, and we're going to have an aerospace engineering pathway for students. So that's why I'm on this call today. We haven't hired all of our teachers, specifically that teacher yet. We have a computer science and a coding teacher, and my instructional coach is on this call as well. But I know we would like to probably set up a time once I hire those teachers to see, how we can, what kind of things we can do to work together.
Absolutely,
So
Michelle. So thank you.
Would you be the person that
Yes.
the main contact? Okay.
Yes, and we can strategize and get the right resources to you and your school for sure.
Thank you.
And I'll go ahead and I'm not sure if it's on any of the slides. I know I didn't put it on mine. I'll drop my email address here in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Larry? Larry, I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm curious what you see the future being as far as STEM in the classroom.
Well, that's a really good question. So I think we've gotten to a place where, everyone knows the acronym and it probably means a million different things across the country to different people. But, going back to the equation that I say that we're trying to solve, it's always been about making sure that, we're putting our nation ahead and that we're preparing students for the careers of tomorrow. So no matter what we're doing in STEM, I think those are the things that we're always trying to do. And what seems to be happening, at least in our state, is a lot of focus on the economy of space. And so I imagine that everyone is here because they're connected to engineering or they're really interested in science, or maybe more importantly, they really love space science. It is something that our state, and, I guess it's not unique to Florida. There are other states that are looking very closely at it as well. But Florida is attempting to, create additional industry around space. And what the publication, Jody, I know you're aware, we go into like this new frontier of competing in space, the resources that might be available there, in one sense, I guess, exploiting planets of, what they may have and trying to beat other countries and getting to those things. But it's more than that. Those of you who appreciate NASA understand that much of, there are many technologies from, aerospace to medicine that were developed because of the research that happened within NASA and the things that we've learned there. So that continues to be, something that we'll look at. But I think this new frontier of space, I mean, we have a Space Force now, and we know the International Space Station is going away. We know that there are rocket launches every 2 to 3 days coming out of Space Force Station or Kennedy Space Center across the state. And so this is a industry that Florida is getting really serious about. And the cool thing, just like with the Department of Defense, is you might be a plant biologist, you might be someone interested in medicine and health, you might be an engineer, you may not have any desire to go into space or necessarily be directly involved in the space program, but all of those industries, Florida is attempting to make a really strong connection to Kennedy and what's going on not only in Florida but around the nation and around the world. So I think if there were a sub-discipline of science that is really exploding at this time and connected to STEM, it would be space science. And I'm a marine scientist myself, so space was never my first choice, but it seems to be someplace where we're really exploring. Great question.
Thank you. I'm always curious how to get young people more involved in the subject matter.
Yeah, and well, I also think, if we look at it from a systemic perspective, this connection between out of school time and in school time is extraordinarily important. And, students can get more time in science in the summer by attending 6 or 8 weeks of a summer camp or multiple summer camps stitched together than they do in the classroom the rest of the time, the rest of the school year. So when we think about teaching them 30 to 45 minutes a day, summer is generally a better time to teach science anyway. So I think if the public education system really goes through a huge restructure, we might be looking at things like places like the Florida Aquarium offering 4 credit coursework, for students in high school, for instance, over summer, instead of taking those courses at, Hillsborough Community College or the University of South Florida, for instance. So I think you're going to see a lot of, the public-private work come to the forefront when we think about science and STEM and career readiness.
Wow. Any other questions? Sue, I saw you unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Nope, sorry. I was just going to unmute and see if you needed someone to moderate questions for you, but I do not see any questions in the chat. So I think everyone must just be waiting for your presentation, Jody.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the good part's coming.
Mhm.
So Jody
Well,
is.
thank you both for the opportunity, and I'll hang around to the end as well.
Thank you so much, Larry. That was very, very interesting. And you got some cool.
Uh-oh, looks like Larry's frozen.
Oh. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to share here. I think that worked. Can you all see my screen? Yes. Okay.
Yes, we can.
So I'm I'm going to switch a little bit from showing you a presentation to going to our website. And sometimes that's a little tricky, so I apologize in advance. So most of you know what the Tampa Bay Times newspaper and education program is, but I'm going to spend a little time talking about the publication first and then talking more specifically about the how you can sign up for the newspaper and education program. This is just a little background about me. I have been the manager of the Tampa Bay Times newspaper and education program since 2005. I started when I was 10. So if you want to do the math. And before that, I was working at NIE at another newspaper. So I've been doing this for a long time. And one of the things that I appreciate the most is our partnerships with people in the community. And this NASA program has been a great opportunity for me to learn as well as for students to learn. I'm also by trade and probably by um, heredity, I'm a language arts teacher. So you will see that there are a lot of writing activities, and we're going to talk a little bit about the publication first, and then we're going to talk about the teacher guide that incorporates both informational text and writing into science. So what is NIE? NIE is a cooperative effort between schools and the newspaper to promote the use of newspapers in print and electronic form as educational resources. Our goal, as always, is to build lifelong readers of the newspaper. As the world changes and students keep getting their information from social media, I push back all the time with, as Sue mentioned earlier, the concept of media literacy. It's important for students to understand, not only understand history, but to understand what the different formats are for learning history. And newspapers are a great tool for that. There are many weekly and daily newspapers throughout the country and the world that provide free access to their newspapers. The Tampa Bay Times provides free resources to Citrus, Hernando, Hillsborough, Manatee, Pasco, Pinellas, and Polk counties. And if somebody joins us from outside of those areas, that is great too. We have some wonderful, generous sponsors that help support our program, and we have a great executive team at the Times that supports what we do. If you have colleagues in your schools or in other areas of the county, of the state, please feel free to share my contact information. I will be happy to let them know what newspapers in their areas are also participating in newspaper and education. So why should we use newspapers to explore science? Well, one of the things Sue talked about a little bit before was the idea that newspapers are a living textbook. The information in the newspaper enhances the information that you have in your textbooks, and it enhances it on a daily basis. So although the Times only prints 2 days a week, we do actually create a newspaper every day. And every day when I look at the newspaper, I see all kinds of things about science. I see things about STEM in general. I see things that students probably don't necessarily know what's going on in their communities. We have a lot of science publications that I'm going to talk about at the end, just so that you know that there are resources available. But the daily newspaper itself is a great tool for finding information about STEM. I know Sue talked about this a little bit, and I just want to mention that although the project was created for students in grades 5 through 8 in Pinellas County, it is available to all of our teachers. We have lots of copies that we can send to you. There's a PDF that, of course, you can view online and that your students can view online, but we also have lots of print copies that we can share with you as well. So no matter what county you're in, you can request those resources from us. So basically, the project focuses on space exploration, especially as it relates to Florida. So the idea is to use the daily newspaper to promote real-world understanding by connecting the science with students' lives. Through the publication, it goes through, I'm pretty sure, and Sue will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that everything we've done is chronological in nature. There are some really important landmark um, landmark events that we go through in the publication, and there are some also landmark events that we go through in the teacher guide when we are backing it up with examples from newspapers and history.
So yeah, so the publication is laid out roughly chronologically, but also thematically. So for example, we start off talking about the space race. Later on, we talk about milestones in space exploration. We talk about using rovers and landers to explore rather than humans. So each spread has a little bit of a different theme, but it is laid out roughly chronologically.
And by spread, she means the pages in the publication. Just throwing that in there. So this is what the publication looks like, and I believe that, you know what, I'll do this first and then I will go to, sorry, my computer's doing weird things. I will talk about this first and then I will switch over to the website and try, or rather the PDF, and try to show you what's going on in the publication. So basically, as you know, NASA and space exploration have been an essential part of Florida since the dawn of the space age. As Larry mentioned, it doesn't matter what your interest is in science, there's something that relates to it when you're talking about space. And I learned as an English teacher and not a science teacher, I learned some really great facts when I was reviewing the publication that Sue actually wrote the publication and teacher guide. And I found some really, really interesting things that I didn't know about. And I don't think that our students are aware necessarily of what's going on as well. So I'm going to, let's see if I can do this without a hitch. I am going to stop sharing this. Oh, I see. It didn't open on my, okay, never mind. I'm going to, let's go back. Let's see what happens if I click on this. Nothing is going to happen. Okay. Let me hold on 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to open the file and try to reshare.
Yeah, PowerPoint's been a little wonky on this Zoom call today.
Yeah, I think that some of that is user error on my my part. But I think I've stopped sharing. Have I stopped sharing? No, I haven't stopped sharing. There we go. There we go. Okay, now let's try that again. Let's see if we can see this. Oh, it might not. There we go. All right. See that? I'm not as incompetent as I thought. This is the publication. And this is available as a PDF, which I will go back and explain to you in a minute how you can access it. And this is a 16-page publication. Oops. Are we still showing? What are you guys seeing?
I can see your screen and the cover of the publication.
Okay, so it's not turning pages like I thought it would. Okay. Let's try it this way. There we go. Can you see the first page now?
Yes, we can.
Yay! Okay. So, as we mentioned, we go through the publication is gone through chronologically, and of course we start in the 1950s. Larry talked about the importance of that. We talk about the first satellite. We talk a little bit about, there's a little bit about history in here. We jump to talking about the Cold War, the newspaper activities, which are on every couple of pages. We'll give students activities that they can do. And if you'll notice, there are standards listed at the bottom. For some reason, I just have to tell you this because you're teachers and you probably understand this. For some bizarre reason, every time I click on something, an AI assistant wants to help me. And I don't need an AI assistant to help me. There is a timeline on the right here that you can see. And you can also see that we have maps and we have photographs, which are all informational text. This is one of my favorite spreads, talking about a decade of firsts. In the 1960s, we saw a lot of different things that started. We've added a component why this is important for students to learn. As you can see, that there's also a graphic here, and there's photographs, original photographs of astronauts and cosmonauts as well. This is still talking about a decade of first. When Sue mentioned the word spread before, basically that's 2 pages together. So pages 4 and 5, we're talking about a decade of firsts. And then as we move in to 6 and 7, we're talking about the 1970s. So one of the things that has changed, obviously, in examining space is the idea that first was just the concept of going to the moon, and then there were concepts of having space stations and Mars rovers and all that kind of fun stuff. Our next decades is the 1980s and the 1990s, talking about the space shuttle, of course. Talking about humans in orbit. Before this, we didn't have humans in orbit. We had, but at the very beginning, we had animals in orbit. We have talking about Mir and talking about the shuttle program and Mir together, which was a landmark collaboration. And then, of course, we move into the 2000s, talking about the International Space Station, which Larry did just mention is going to be going away soon. But it's as far as space and knowing what's going on in space, the experiments that were done at the space station, all of that is very important for students to learn about. I think, no, it's not on this page, never mind. In the 2010s, we talk about landers and rovers. Talk about exploration without humans actually being there. It's amazing to me that we can drive a car on Mars or on the moon from here, from in Florida. All that kind of stuff I think is just fascinating. There's a lot of information in here there's a lot of date information in here. There's a lot of information that students probably don't know about the ingenuity of space travel and space exploration. And I'm going to hold on this one for a minute. We have a lot of activities in here using the newspaper as a resource to show students how the past and the present overlap. But this is a great hands-on activity for students to make a cardboard rover. We had at one of our library events, we had students making, were they making some kind of, they were making some kind of rover.
They were making landers. Yeah, they were making little landers.
Yes, and that was very popular with the kids. They were very excited about them. They were very excited to see them working. So this is a great activity for you to do in your classroom. And thank you for that help, Sue. As we moved into the 2020s, obviously we have privatization, commercial space exploration. We have the idea that there are many countries, not just the United States, that are involved in space exploration. We talk about the different countries that are involved in that and when they became involved in that. And then we have Back to the Moon. The Back to the Moon section has this great activity with postcards to space, where students can actually write postcards and send them to space. I believe that we are at our library activities that we're doing, we're collecting all those so that they all go up at the same time. There is a lag, a time lag, if your students do this activity, where you can actually get the postcard back from space. But I think that one of our parents told us it took them a couple of years to actually get a response. And I'm going to talk about standards for just for a few minutes. On the back page, we have all the standards that are covered in this particular publication. And then when we go back to the activities, you'll see that the activities also list the standards. Most of the standards are either best standards, science standards. We have a couple of math standards in here. There's some history in here as well. So it's very well rounded as far as hitting those standards for your students. And I am going to switch to, let's see if I can do this. I'm going to show you, oops. I am going to show you, I thought I was going to show you. You know what? I'm going to do this. I am going to go to the website because my computer is not cooperating. So to find the PDF and the other materials that I'm going to show you, this is our website. Our website is tampabay.com/NIE. And we're going to talk about the website in a minute, but I'm going to show you where these resources are. If you go to curriculum and you go down to science, and then you just scroll down, these are in alphabetical order. Oops. You will see SPACE4LL. And what we have here is the publication, which is available that I just showed you as a PDF. We also have the teacher guide, which is a PDF, and we have an extended space exploration timeline. And this is what I wanted to open for you. So hopefully this is going to work. Yes, it works. Perfect. This is a more in detail timeline of space exploration from, as you can see, 1957 to the present time. And again, Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do actually have a higher resolution of this. It is a gigantic file though. So the file that is posted here is low resolution, but as you can see, the images and stuff are still very, very good, even though this is a lower resolution.
Yeah, so this expanded timeline came about because we had so much great content, but we simply physically couldn't fit it in the 16-page publication. So this file, the file that's up on the website is actually perfectly fine. It'll print out fine. It's formatted on 8.5 by 11 sheets so that it's easily printable by anyone on their home printer or their school printer. If for some reason you do want a crazy high def file, we can supply that, but it is 79 megs. So unless you are planning on having it professionally printed and bound, you probably don't need that high resolution version, but it is available if you would like it. But I hope that some of you do make this timeline available to your students to maybe do some research on, or even just post it on your classroom wall for them to enjoy. There's a lot of fun stuff in there.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about informational text in a minute, but all of these photographs, all of these original primary source documents, that you can use in your classroom. Your students, I feel like I'm kind of alluding to my age here, but your students probably don't know anything about the beginnings of space exploration. And these are great conversation starter photos, along with the information that Sue has for the dates. The photos themselves are great conversation starters. So I am going to, let's see if this is going to work. There we go. So if we go backwards to, again, this is all listed under this, this Space for All heading. And then the other thing we have is this wonderful teacher guide, which I believe, yes, I believe that Sue said it was hundreds of pages. It is hundreds of pages. One of the reasons that it's so long is because she has done a great job pulling some primary sources for you that are all listed at the end. Basically, there's a table of contents here, but what I wanted to show you is that all of the information in here has the standards listed underneath the activities. So whatever it is you choose to do with your students, whatever it is you choose to focus on, all the standards are listed so you can just plug those into your lesson plan. There's also some really great resources listed, and I am going to jump. Let's see if this let me do this. Yes. I'm going to jump to the end where there's a bunch of resources for you that you can go to as well. There are, I believe, oh, just 2 pages. Okay. For some reason, I thought there were more. There's also some information about the Florida standards listed at the end of the publication, and I'm going to show you a few of the primary sources. This is, well, who can tell me what this is? Either in the chat or unmute yourself. Who takers on my political cartoon? Why do you think why would the students be confused about the heading up here? Any thoughts?
Because man is not spelled right?
Yes, that is very good. Man is not spelt right. And they probably have no idea who Mao is. Very good. So when you're examining political cartoons and photos, one of the things that you want to do with your class is find out what it is they think they perceive, what it is they're thinking is going on. And if they tell you that man is misspelled, that's a very good observation because technically it is. This is another political cartoon. And again, students might not be familiar with some of these things, but if you ask them for the details, they can see the different flags. They can see the flag on the uniform. They can see the flag in the face shield. Here's another political cartoon showing a visitor from another planet, I'm assuming. And then we also have, I'm going to go back up. There's lots of political cartoons in here, and there's lots of original documents that I am going to click on. So this is a map with all kinds of information about that. Sue has this in the publication, and it's a larger version of the map of Apollo mission landing sites. And then she also has these great newspaper articles, historical newspaper articles in here. So there's lots and lots of material for you to use with your students. As you can see, it's not just from the Tampa Bay Times, it's also from other newspapers. We did focus, of course, on Florida. So most of these sources do come from Florida. And there's a lot of things in here that you can tie into as far as depending on what area you're teaching, if you're teaching Rhetoric, this is a good example of rhetoric. If you are teaching science in general, or if you're teaching the history, there's lots of different sources for you to use. And as I mentioned, I'm going to go back up to the beginning here. There is a table of contents here, so it's easy for you to find things. You can download this onto your computer. You can download it onto your Canvas page. You can take specific pages out and don't download them onto your Canvas page as well. So if we go back here, again, I am going to show you how I got there. And I went to our home page. I clicked on curriculum and I clicked on science. And these are all of the science publications that we currently have. We recently did a publication on recycling with Hillsborough and Pinellas counties, which are listed on here as well. I believe both of those are bilingual, so you can download the English and the Spanish. We have this great conservation publication here with Pasco County. We have a Pasco County recycling publication that will be in schools, I believe, in the next couple of weeks. And we also have a hurricane guide that will be available to you in the next, I'm going to say 2 weeks as well. And although one of the things to note about some of these publications is they are county specific, there's lots of great information for you to share. What is good for you to prepare for in a hurricane in Pinellas County is just as good in Hillsborough County. Sue, are you going to say something before I move on?
I was going to jump in real quick and say special to the Aerospace Academy folks that are on the call. We have an older publication that's no longer up on the website because it was created back in 2014 for the 100th anniversary of the beginning of commercial flight, which happened right here in Tampa Bay. But it does still have a lot of really good information about the science of flight. And so if you are interested in getting a PDF copy of that, we certainly can get that to you.
Yes, just reach out. I'm going to give you our contact information at the end, and you can just reach out to either of us. We'll be happy to share that. I'm just gonna, I don't recall. Are you still looking at the website? Yes. Okay. I don't recall the order that I put this in on the PowerPoint, but that's okay. I'm going to also talk about a couple of things that are available to you on our website. Again, all of these resources, and I should have said this at the very beginning, but all of our resources are free of charge. Whether you are an NIE teacher currently, whether you want to become an NIE teacher, or whether you are sharing newspapers with another teacher and you are not signed up, all of these things are free to you. So another place where you can find science resources is under weekly lessons. And when you click on this link, it is going to take you to a whole bunch of different modules, I guess would be the word for it. And even though that a lot of them are not science-based, there's a lot of science in them. So for example, in this news video, we're talking about tariffs. So we're talking about financial literacy this week. Headline geography is focused on specific major news events, but it covers geography throughout the world, which is always helpful. We have our front page talking points, which this is actually one of those lessons that you can use as bell work, or you can use it as part of a lesson that you're doing. You can certainly talk about science when you're talking about torpedo bats. This has something for students to read, something for students to watch, and then questions for students to answer. But you can certainly use any of these for science. We also have Pulse of the Planet, which are science audio webcasts. And I know that the title of this page is weekly lessons, but I believe those are actually updated every month. We also have a link to NASA's Night Sky Network. You can read the column. Those are also updated on a monthly basis. The NIE special report is also is updated, I believe, quarterly, and that covers different subjects as well. This week in history would cover historical things as well as science things, cartoons in the classroom. All of these are available to you by just clicking on this weekly lessons page. The other thing that is available to you are our monthly topics. And April is a great time to talk about science because it's Earth Day. We also have some really good front page breaking news headlines that are science related. We have Tuesday, April 16th is an article, is the headline from the Titanic. We have April 13th is Russia's flight cures mankind into a new era. We have information here about the space exploration teaching trunks. Sue, are those still available to teachers? They're not available to teachers. Okay. But we do have the headline, we do have the article here, and we also have the article from the first Earth Day. I do want to mention that if you are on Facebook, that we have a Facebook page, and a lot of times we put these front page news pages on Facebook for you so that you can see what the historical event is. We try to cover as many subjects as we can. And we also have Earth Day resources for you that have been updated. As Larry mentioned earlier, there are some websites that when you go to them now, they show you a 404, especially government websites. So we've updated these for you. We also have lots of our science curriculum, Land of Flowers. We have celebrating Tampa's wildlife habitats. And we have I believe that we actually have 2 publications on the springs, but this is the most recent one. So these are all under monthly topics. I'm going to go back to the top of my page here, and they are by month. And then when you go back to our front page, for those of you who are not NIE teachers, if you would like to be an NIE teacher for the 2005 school year, you have about a week left to sign up. If you are interested, if you would like to get print copies of the newspaper for the end of the year, through the end of the year, or digital access, you would just go to this sign up here button and click on that. And there is a form for you to fill out. Once you choose your county, and I'm just going to choose a random county here, it populates all the schools. Your school should be listed, especially if you received an invite to this webinar, your school should be listed. But if it's not, you can reach out to me. Again, we do produce a print newspaper on Wednesdays and Sundays, and you can get those delivered to your class on Wednesdays. The digital edition comes out every day. And you can, once you subscribe to the digital edition, your students will have access anywhere where there is internet capabilities. So you can give them homework to do. You can do it for classwork. You can do it, you can have them look it up on their phones. They can look it up on their laptops. They can look it up on the computer labs at school, in the media centers. We'll give you, once you sign up, we'll give you a login. And I am going to show you real quickly what that looks like. So when you click log in, hopefully it will go to the right page. I feel like we need Jeopardy music.
It's working on it.
It's working on it. It's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. It's thinking very slowly. Well, maybe it won't go there. There we go. Okay. Oh, I forgot we have our Florida Gator Championship poster that we're advertising. So basically what you're going to see is you're going to see this page and it's going to ask you for a username and password. You can use my username and password if you would like to look at it now and you don't have access. The username there is Pushkin, my last name, at tbt.com. And that is the login for my access. And the password is times in lowercase, TIMES. And when I click on login, it should take me to today's newspaper. And I'm going to need to move this out of my way. There we go. And as you can see, this is exactly what the newspaper looks like. So you can look at this as a single page. You can look at it as a double page. Here we have an article about flooding, which is perfect for weather and science. If we go to the front page, we have this great image of this bee and the flower. We have lots of information about business, of course, for today, because we're talking about the stock market. If you go to the menu, it will give you an option to look at specific sections. You can look at, you can have your students peruse the sections, or you can send them somewhere specifically. You can download specific articles. You can download the entire newspaper. You can create clippings. You can do all that kind of fun stuff. So if you were, for example, if you wanted to talk about allergies and you wanted to talk about pollen and bees, you could just go ahead and clip this article and put it on your Canvas page. If you don't want to read the entire newspaper, you could talk about flooding if you wanted to talk about weather. So you can pull any of these articles out, or you can just have your students go through them in the newspaper. Any questions about that? Let's see. There are some comments in the chat. Okay, perfect. So I am going to stop sharing this and go back, if I can, to my PowerPoint. There we go. So I just showed you a bunch of these publications. We have lots of information for science teachers. Again, if you have some trouble finding it, please feel free to reach out to Sue or I. We will be happy to help you. This is the information that I just told you about. By going to tampabay.com/NIE and clicking under science under the curriculum tab, you will be able to see all the publications we have for you. One thing I do want to mention, for those of you who are new to listening to me ramble on and on, I am just going to mention that we did have some issues with the last hurricane. So a lot of the publications that we had available to send to you, we no longer have in print because they are covered in mold. A crane hit our building in downtown downtown St. Petersburg, and that's where everything was stored. So we do have plenty of NASA publications for you. We do have some other more recent publications, the recycling publications. We have one focusing on weather and how to take care of yourself when the weather is really hot outside. So we do have some of those publications available for print. If you're not sure, again, you can just reach out, but I believe they're marked on the, or they will be marked on the curriculum page.
So we did just update the curriculum page and mark, unfortunately, most of them are marked not available in print, but the PDFs are available for free download. And as we continue to have a very, very busy publication schedule through the end of spring and then starting up again in August, we will soon have a plethora of new publications for you all to download and enjoy.
And one I'm going to plug for Sue right now. We are going to be talking about the science of chocolate in the fall. And Sue is very excited about that one. She did a wonderful publication called The History of Chocolate that also has some great material in there that you could use as science teachers as well. I also wanted to touch on, we have a brand new environmental hub at the Tampa Bay Times that is featuring 4 primary reporters and a coordinating editor. The hub has been in development now for a long time, so I'm really glad that it is finally launched. The Wasting Away publication, talking about the toll that pollution is taking on the Florida waterways, is our first investigative reporting article on that hub. And this, I'm just going to kind of breeze through this real quickly. Basically, the whole idea of reading the newspaper is to get students reading. We want them to be reading informational text. We want them to be media literate. We want them to be critical thinkers. And the newspaper is a great tool for that. I have a picture here of showing the newspaper in its various forms. We also have some great weekly newspapers. We just launched St. Petersburg Beacon. And the weekly newspapers are a great tool to engage students with local news because they are very localized. Basically, newspapers are an adult medium, but the reading level is kind of somewhere between 6th and 8th grade. So there's a great tools for finding vocabulary. It's great for engaging students. At least my students, I'm an adjunct at Hillsborough Community College, and my students told me they didn't know what a newspaper was, that they get all their news from Instagram and Snapchat, and they didn't know that newspapers still existed. So of course that hurt my heart, but I introduced them to newspapers so that they could see that there's lots of information, and I connect it to the curriculum that we do in our classroom. As you know, newspapers are a primary source and they're also a secondary source. Basically, a primary source are the original documents and objects that were created at the time under study, and all of the things in the newspaper, from the headlines to the photographs to the captions, all of those are primary sources. There are some great primary sources and secondary sources on the timeline that Sue has posted on our website. And then the last thing I'm just going to talk about is informational text. The idea that anything that is nonfiction text can be used as informational text is sort of a fallacy, because you want to be looking at longer things, not just like a menu from a store or a stop sign. But there are lots of things that you can use in the newspaper on a daily basis that fall into that category. So again, if you would like to become an NIE teacher, if you're not one already, go to our website and click sign up here. Please do that before the end of this week. Believe it or not, we are getting to the end of the school year, so it's time to wrap up one school year and start the next school year. If you have any questions or you need anything, you can reach out to Sue or I. Email is the best way to get us. You can also reach out to our general mailbox, which is ordernie@tampabay.com. I monitor that on a daily basis. So if you are looking for materials, if you're not sure where to find something, we are happy to provide that information. And also we do print, Sue mentioned that we have a plethora of new things coming out in the fall. We do let you know that via email and via Facebook. So please like us on Facebook. We are happy to share information there, and I am happy to include anybody who wants to be included on our email list.
I was going to jump in real quick, Jody, and say that Jody sends a email every week on Mondays. And it basically just gives you a very quick update of anything new that we have going on, any new workshops or webinars, any new publications that are coming out. And it gives you the highlights of those weekly lessons. So you can skim through it really quick and say, ooh, there's a news video that I can use this week. And the best way to get on that list is to sign up and be an NIE teacher, because all the cool kids are NIE teachers. But if you don't see yourself being an NIE teacher, you can email us and get on the email list, if you're not, even if you're not an active NIE teacher. But we hope that you become an NIE teacher, because there are so many ways you can use the paper. And once you start using it, you will just find more and more ways.
And even if you're sharing print newspapers with somebody else, I know that a lot of times teachers work together and they share print newspapers. You can still sign up for the digital access, and that way you'll be an NIE teacher and you will be on our mailing list. And speaking of NIE teachers, I'm going to plug our Educator of the Year award. Sue, you can certainly help me with that. The deadline to submit for that is you know what? I'm going to stop sharing and I am going to go back to the website. Let's see if I can do that flawlessly. Probably not.
So while you're navigating back to
yes.
the website, every year we run a recognition program called Teacher of the Year. We've actually just expanded it to Educator of the Year. We wanted to make sure that people such as media specialists who also use the paper for instructional purposes were included. But this is basically a contest where we ask people to share how they're using the newspaper in their classroom. There are some amazingly creative ideas out there that our educators are using. This year, it's a two-step process. So we are accepting nominations through the end of April. You can nominate yourself. We encourage you to, but you can also nominate a colleague who maybe is too shy to do it themselves. And after April 30th, we will select people to go forward to the second round, and we will ask them for a little bit more information. We expect to announce this year's Educator of the Year towards the end of June. The first place, the grand prize winner wins a $1,500 cash prize. That is $1,500, as well as just all sorts of other fun stuff. You get to go to the Florida Media Conference with us. Runners up, we can have up to 6 runners up who win a $300 cash prize. And of course, the enduring fame of being named an NIE Educator of the Year. So we really do encourage you, if you're using the paper or you have a colleague who is using the paper, please help us out and nominate them so we can recognize them. We have some donors who are so excited about our program. They have donated to make that cash prize really significant, and we love to give it away. We can't keep it, we have to give it out. So get yourself in the running. And I will just very quickly, since we have a little bit of time left, this is not science, but it's science adjacent. And that would be another one of my heart projects. And this would be our annual high school student science fiction and fantasy writing contest. And I'm not sure that link worked. Oh, okay, that link is going to work. So this is a contest. Every year we ask high school students to share their creativity with us by writing a short story on some kind of science fictional theme. This year's theme is time travel, which is pretty awesome. We are looking forward to hearing what stories. There's absolutely no fee to enter. Students can enter as many stories as they want. The only requirement is that they be in high school and over the age of 13 in one of our Tampa Bay counties. The people who are reading the stories are actual professional working writers. And we hope that if you are a high school teacher or you know a high school kid who's interested in writing and or science, please help us spread the word. We get amazing entries every year, but we feel like there are so many more kids out there who just have stories to tell and stories to share with us that are not hearing about our contest. There is a cash prize for this contest. The grand prize winner gets $200 and the runners up get $25. But I think the most important thing is that the grand prize winner does get their story published on the contest website. And there are plans afoot. There is no time frame for this, but there are plans afoot to publish an ebook of the grand prize winning stories. The quality of them is just outstanding. And you can read those on the contest webpage. So Jody, if you go back a page and scroll down, you can see the past. If you click on any of those, it will bring you to the grand prize winning stories, and you can read them and see the quality of the stories that we are getting. So that's me done. We have 15 minutes left if anyone has questions.
I'm also going to just throw in there that there's a reception that where we honor the high school students that have won prizes, and it's extremely heartwarming. One of our judges comes out and talks to the students. He's a writer and he asks them author type questions, and it's very good. And I just wanted to show you real quick where I went to those pages from. On our homepage, just go down and you'll see Educator of the Year and Student Writing Contest are on our home.
Hey, Jody, if you scroll up and you go to About Us and you go to Photo Gallery, all the way down the bottom, you can actually, we have some pictures of the most recent Student Writing Contest reception, and you can see it's the third one on the top row there.
Oh.
And you can see that the grand prize winner reads, and everyone gets a plaque or a certificate. It's a very nice event.
Hey, those pictures came out pretty good.
They sure did.
Okay, now I will stop sharing.
Larry, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up for the evening?
I'm good. Just thanking teachers for everything they do, and keep moving ahead even in these difficult times.
And I want to second that. Teachers, you are just amazing. We really appreciate you spending your time with us this evening. And we really appreciate all the stuff that you do in the classroom.
All right. Well, it looks like we're going to give you 14 minutes back in your day. I know. Yay.
Yeah.
On behalf of the Times and the NIE program, thank you all for coming out tonight. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your night.
Thank you, everybody.